Good evening, family. How are you? This is Elder Topaz, and I am your director of connections right here at the Potter's House of Fort Worth. And so every month we have a very special segment called Live at Five. And so our last Live at Five of the year is with our amazing grief and support group. Here, they're a very diverse group of clinicians, of clergy, men and women, lay helpers. Each one of them have such an unique experience in the area of grief and loss. But before we dive in, I want to invite you to connect with us. I want you to like this, tag someone, text someone, share this with someone, call somebody, and let them know we are here talking about something that is near and dear to our heart, near and dear to the Potter's House of Fort Worth family, grief and loss. And so many of us, if we all just really connect with each other, many of us have experienced grief and loss pre-pandemic and even more so in the pandemic. And so one thing that we have to really realize as we're going through this grief and loss journey is that grief is really a normal response to loss. It's a normal response. And I know oftentimes we can try to reduce our grief and loss journey or reduce that journey of someone else, which is why it's so important that here at the Potter's House of Fort Worth, we wanted to make sure that we are so diligent about supporting and undergirding our community, our church family, even those abroad through their grief and loss journey. Because oftentimes when we talk about grief and loss, we really want to just reduce it to the loss of a person, but oftentimes loss is of a person is just one aspect of grief and loss, which is what we're going to talk about today. But it could be drastic changes like in your daily routine and the stability of your life, loss of a relationship, divorce, a friendship with someone. It could be the loss of employment. You may have lost a job and that has affected your quality of life. It could be separation anxiety from someone you really care about, or just the loss of a wealth of support that you've experienced before. And now that that support is reduced, you're in a state of grief. So during the pandemic, even then, many of us can really identify with a lot of those areas that I just mentioned. But today, we're going to dive a little bit deeper into this conversation. We're going to engage you with some transparent conversation and dialogue about loss. And we're also going to introduce you to a very special program that we're launching on December the 17th. It's called Grief Share. And we're super excited about it. Towards the end of this program, we're going to share some information about that. But without further ado, I really want you to connect with this, to really identify. We want you to participate. You can drop questions in the chat. You can drop comments, anything that is on your heart that you want us to bring forward and highlight. We want you to get involved because, like I said, this is a very special area. And so I'm going to yield the floor to our leader, our fearless leader of this group, of our Grief Share Journey, Grief and Loss group, our Grief Share team. Her name is Elder Amanda Apollon. And so, yes, if you would, just please love on her. Such a jewel and treasure in our ministry. We absolutely love her. And we thank you. I want to openly thank you for your leadership and for your diligence and your stewardship in this area of Grief Share. But without further ado, I'm yielding the floor to you.
Thank you so much, Elder Topaz. And it's an honor, honestly, to be able to be in the position where having my own personal experience with grief and loss, I can look not only towards my healing, but trusting God that there's purpose in the pain that I've had to experience, and to be able to labor alongside such a wonderful team like the one that we have for the grief and loss support ministry. I'm especially grateful for the vision of our pastor, and just, this is such a timely needed resource for our community and for God's people. So just very thankful for that. And as a leader of this group, I do want to just share that this journey is one that we want everyone to understand. There's no time frame on this journey, that this is going to be your journey alone. And there are different ways that we can share how to navigate that journey in a positive way, in a way that engenders healing. And we're looking forward to not only sharing nuggets with you today, but then also meeting you in person at the Grief Share sessions that we'll be hosting in the upcoming year. So I would like to introduce our co-laborers, and I'll start with Dr. Angela Mitchell. And if you'll just share with the team who you are and how you factor into this amazing team. Thank you, Dr. Angela.
Thank you, Elder Apollon. My name is Angela Mitchell, and I am a member of the Potter's House of Fort Worth. I'm also the ministry lead for the Lay Helpers Ministry. It's a ministry within our church that's specifically geared toward helping our members and our guests to get connected to resources within the community. And a lot of times those resources may be related to mental health resources, things that a person might need as it relates to homelessness, battered women's shelters, just anything that a person might need to take them from point A to point B. So it seems like it's outside of the church, but not really, because once you kind of need those things to be in place before you can really receive a lot of what we're receiving from our messages in the church. So the Lay Helpers Ministry is equipped for that, equipped to listen, equipped to step in and provide that listening ear, that prayer, but to also help people get actual resources. And we're hoping that some of the lay helpers who are in this ministry may also choose to help out with be a facilitator for Grief Share. So that's where that connection comes between those two ministries. And so I'm excited because I think it's a wonderful marriage between those two ministries and between among the people invested, because we're all about helping. We show mercy. We're about loving on people and making sure that they get the resources that they need, whether that be through the grief journey, a mental health journey, substance abuse journey, homelessness journey, whatever that journey is. We want to come alongside it and help. So that's why I'm here. I'm excited. And I will pass the floor back to you, Elder Apollon.
Thank you so much, Dr. Angela. And as you can already see for our audience, how important it is to have the different components of support in this Grief Share ministry. It's important that we have the lay helpers because there's going to be times probably where we will need to have, as Elder Haynes, and I use this because she uses it so beautifully, that second touch. Sometimes we need to have just that extra, that extra mile that we're called to do in ministry. And so being able to have the support of the lay helpers is such a blessing to us. So next we'll go to Lady Shanae.
Hello, I am Shanae Dilworth. I am also a member of the Potter's House of Fort Worth. I came about 3 years ago, and the Lord just led me to this church. And as I have been here, I am also the leader of the Teenagers Ministry, which are ladies and gentlemen that are 50 years or better. And so with that ministry, just as Dr. Angela was saying, it's a clear connection because of the Grief Share, because of the ages of some of the members of the teenagers. We would definitely benefit from all of the information and all of the things that we could, especially tackling grief. I too, like so many others, have loved and lost. I mean, my first was my grandmother, of course, but here recently, I lost my husband and my mother. So dealing with that type of grief as well, it is so much better to have someone in the house that can help you go along and go through the stages and go through the things that you don't think you'll be able to do, but only through the Lord we are. But it's a beautiful opportunity for those of us to come out and share our stories and listen, because we're all still learning. This journey is forever, because this is just what it is. It's life and death, and we have to be able to deal with it. And I am very excited to be on this team. This is something that Elder Topaz and I had talked about a long time back, and here it is, and in such a wonderful way, and a beautiful way of getting it out to the community. and letting people know that they have a safe space, that they can come and be a part of a team and a family that understand and not just say, I know what you're going through, but have actually gone through some of the things that we must deal with in life. And I'm throwing it back to you, Dr.
Thank you so much, Lady Shanae. You're absolutely right. There's one thing to go through a journey like this and you don't have a support system, or you don't have what we coin like your inner circle or your tribe or the watchman on the wall. And we are very fortunate in that our church is very intimately in relationship with one another. And I have seen it not only personally in my own grief and loss journey, but with others. And so we are definitely a membership that believes in bringing it in and just clinging to one another and laboring in that. And that's a perfect segue for introducing elders Eduardo and Shauna Haynes, who have been instrumental not only in my journey, but many others. So I'll have you guys introduce yourselves.
Okay. My name is Elder Eduardo Haynes. My wife and I, Elder Shauna Haynes, we're over the elders and ministers. We lead that amazing ministry. I'm also involved in the men's ministry and really closely involved with the bereavement team as well. We play a instrumental role dealing with funerals and loss of loved ones. And we knew that there was a strong and a deep demand for healing as it related to grief. So this is something that is definitely needed. Our hearts go out, to those that are grieving, because we've grieved as well, and we know the pain of the loss, as far as dealing with family and friends and loved ones. So we're really, I'm really excited about being a part of this ministry, about being a part of this grief share as well. As a facilitator, as a support role as well, whatever we can do to minimize the amount of weight that is being carried through the grief process. The Bible talks about we are, the strong shall bear the infirmities of the weak. And it's important that we try to carry as much of the burden and the weight that our fellow people are going through dealing with grief. So once again, I am excited about being a part of this. We got some phenomenal leaders that are here. And we love people. We want to see all of the people that we come in contact with well. We want to see them strengthened throughout the grief process as well. So I'm going to turn it over to my wife.
Well, I love how you mentioned weight. Because I think that that's really what it's all about. Hi, I'm Elder Shauna Haynes, and we've all had grief happen to us. And I know the difference of handling it by myself, walking through it without anyone else, and then walking with a tribe. And the Ecclesiastes 11 and 10 tells us that lift the gloom from your heart. And so if the Bible is telling us to lift it, and that we are to bear each other's burdens, then I can come alongside and maybe I can be a lifter. I can assist you with that. Right. And this grief share I'm just so excited about it, because I see that we were already trying to do that, but we just didn't have the curriculum. And our love was pouring out to those who were walking through grief. But this is an opportunity for us to get better.
Yes.
And pinpoint areas and be more strategic and help more people. I think catch more fish by assisting more people through that process. And I'm excited to be a part of it.
Thank you so much, Elders Haynes, the dream team, the dynamic duo. Thank y'all so much. And so I think that's a perfect segue into just for the listening audience and understanding what grief is. And Elder Topaz, highlighted that grief is definitely something that we experience whenever we are mourning the loss of a loved one. And it goes even beyond that. She did a beautiful job at explaining that it could be about relationships. It could be divorce. It could be you're retiring and, you have a different infrastructure of what that every day looks like and what your life will look like now in retirement. grief has so many other components that are associated with it. It can have a physical effect on your body. It can a cognitive effect on you behaviorally. Things change sometimes, and we'll talk about the stages of grief. But behaviorally, socially, even culturally, how we deal with grief is very unique. Our spiritual beliefs are sometimes challenged or even cemented, and then there's philosophical dimensions about grief. So there's many components that go into this dynamic. There's a question that we have in the chat, which is the program geared towards in-person meetings only. So we did our church was really amazing in sending out a survey to our membership, and largely the response was that people were more inclined to want to meet in person. And I think, and I'm guessing at this, but I can only base it on my own experience, which is sometimes people feel like coming together and having that iron sharpening iron and not forsaking the fellowship components come into that. So right now it is in person. We would have to wait until further along whenever we're having the grief sessions on whether or not we'll have online opportunities. I do know that through the Grief Share website that there are some sessions that are available, and some of those can be found online. I would like to say that, for whoever asked that question, thank you for asking that. I would encourage you though to consider it in person. One of the components about grief is that when we're in the thick of grief, sometimes we try to isolate, and that can be okay whenever you do need your time, because we'll talk about boundaries in this session. But the other side of that is isolation can also be very detrimental. It can be very, we just need to be cautious with how much we push people away, because really that's when we need a support system. And that looks like, there's different components to that. And we'll talk a little bit more about that, but thank you for your question. So what we'll do is we'll talk about the stages of grief, and feel free to ask questions that you have. When you hear the stages of grief, if there's anything that you've experienced, feel free to put those in the chat. So there are different components to the stages of grief, and a lot of it has to do with sometimes the manner of death. Sometimes we lose loved ones due to illness. Sometimes it's an anticipatory death where maybe someone has received a diagnosis, maybe it's a terminal disease. And then also there's sudden and tragic loss where, someone's passed away very suddenly, very tragically, and a large variety of emotions come with that. So one of the stages is the shock and denial, and that's in any area of grief, regardless of how the loss was. A lot of us have experienced this in the pandemic, where we, number one, weren't used to being in a pandemic, and then here we are, and then my loved one went in and they were sick, and they were you hear a lot of stories where people say, but they were okay, they were well, they really didn't have any health issues, but then they succumbed to COVID. So the shock and denial, trying to process that. Disorder is that cognitive inability to kind of place things in order. Like, I just can't process that this is really what's happened. I can't make sense of it all. We talked about how grief comes out in other areas, in other ways, and anger is a very normal stage of grief, where once maybe the shock wears off or you're trying to place everything in order, then it's the reality of, oh my gosh, this really happened. Maybe, it wasn't the way that I wanted. I prayed, I asked God for healing, and it didn't come, and then that anger comes out. Guilt and bargaining. This is very normal in grief, where we go back over the relationship. Maybe there's guilt in maybe the last thing that was said, or we feel like we didn't spend enough time with our loved one. And then the bargaining is, asking God. We ask God. A lot of us in grief and loss, we say, Lord, if you just bring them back. And we know they're not coming back, but that cognitive inability to really process reality and what we're dealing with, that's hard to separate when you're going through grief. Distress is very normal. This can affect the way that you sleep. Not being able to sleep in grief is very normal. Not being able to concentrate is very normal. They have a term that they call grief brain. It's like the brain fog. where, you might read something right now, but you can't retain it. It's very normal in grief. Depression is another thing that's very normal in grief. I think as believers, sometimes we look at depression. Message is, you don't have enough faith, and that's just not true. This is one of those areas where, and we'll talk about that a little bit later in this session, is we need to know when we need more help, especially when we're coping with depression or anxiety. There's loneliness. Loneliness is very normal in grief, especially if the person that you're remembering was your person. It could be from like a best friend. You lost a best friend. It could be your spouse. It could be your child. Whatever the relationship is, that loneliness factor is very easy to experience. And then, of course, withdrawal. And we just spoke about that with regard to the question about the in-person sessions. It's easy for us to withdraw because the harsh reality is when there's loss and we're grieving, the world continues to move forward. Right. And it's expensive for the griever because life has stopped for you and the world keeps going. And then there's acceptance. Getting to a place where as you're journeying along in your grief and doing the good work of grief, of getting to the place where you say, okay, they're really not coming back. Now I really do have to frame what life looks like without them because I've had them for so long. Mm-hmm. So these are the stages of grief. And I welcome my teammates to just kind of pepper in and share if, where any of these stages may have resonated with you in your own journey.
Elder Amanda, I have a question because, as you were sharing these stages, oftentimes, even as you said earlier, we can't put a time limit. We can't frame someone's grief journey for them. And so oftentimes a person who's going through grief has people around them who don't even understand these stages of grief, who don't understand, how to truly walk alongside someone, even though they have the heart to do it, but they may not know how. They may not have the tools. They may not have the tribe or the resources to do it. And so I just want to ask, for our Grief Share support group, can people who are walking alongside someone who is going through grief, go through this Grief Share program so they can be educated and have the tools they need to walk alongside that person? Because, someone who goes through our Grief Share program, they can come out and walk into an environment where that there's not enough education and awareness, about what they're going through. So is it open to people who just want to support someone who is going through grief?
Absolutely, it is. And I'm so grateful for that question, Elder Topaz, because I remember when I was in Grief Share, it was following my son's passing in 2018. I went through the 13 weeks and every session I just cried because I didn't have capacity. And I knew the people that were in my immediate sphere of like being the inner circle and the watchman, they were grieving too, because this became like this grief. It just overwhelmed everyone that was connected to us. And so I did feel like I can't put more on them because they're already going through so much. So in these sessions, there were two people in particular. There was a young lady who was in a horrible car wreck with her best friend, and she survived and her best friend didn't. Mm-hmm. She was there with the best friend's mother because she wanted, number one, she was grieving, but she wanted to know how to support her best friend's mother. There was a brother that was attending to learn how to support his sister whose husband had passed away. So excellent question, because this is a perfect opportunity for those who are supporting those who are bereaved to come in and just have a deeper understanding of what the journey looks like, what their person might be experiencing, and then knowing primarily they don't have to have the answer and they are not the answer. Mm-hmm. What we say, right. Yes, you don't have to have the answer and you're not the answer. Just taking space with someone that's in this journey is everything.
Absolutely. And I just want to add to Elder Amanda, and I'm going to, yield the floor, that this Grief Share program is not just for Potter's House of Fort Worth members. It's for anyone who can get to the church when we have these weekly sessions. If you can get here, you are more than welcome. So I don't want you to think this is just a Potter's House of Fort Worth thing. This is a community thing. This is a body of Christ thing. This is your opportunity to really connect with all types of people from all walks of life, all generations, all religions. We're not bound by that. So I don't want you to think that just because you're not a member of our church, you can't attend. You are welcome no matter where you're coming from.
Exactly.
Elder Amanda, if I could just chime in really quickly, I wanted to add something because I love the way you went through the stages of grief. And the first thing that popped in my mind is if the relationship was complicated, it complicates the stages. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like another layer, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
And so it's like, oh, my father passed away, or oh, my son, or oh, my, and if the relationship was, you know, pretty good, that's one level, and that's one set of stages. But if there were problems, if there was trauma, if there was anything else that kind of could get in, I mean, that could complicate all of the stages. So I just wanted to add that little piece in there because we'll get to those things in this support group as well, because a lot of times relationships are complicated. We're imperfect people.
Right.
But sometimes it's really complicated. And I mean, I just want to make sure we understand that that's okay too.
Yes.
Absolutely. That's so good, Dr. Angela. Thank you for sharing that.
I love that too. And that you added that it depends on the relationship. Well, 6 years ago, my dad passed away, and I felt like I stayed in an angry state for a long time that people didn't even know I was angry until I bit you. Like, and it was, and I just couldn't, and that was a walk. I think Elder Topaz and I lost our fathers around the same time. But I walked that one alone, and I saw a difference so much. So, but I remember, and then the denial, and now the acceptance, and now being able to talk to my sons about what I can see in them, that I can still see my daddy, that, Caleb, you have my daddy's smile. If anybody ever says anything to you about that, you have your grandpa's smile, and now but for a while I was so angry, like, we're not done. Like, we have conversations we need to make and you need to help me raise these boys, because my dad was an All-American, and he just would have loved. We had 2 daughters, and one of us, we were the biggest tomboys. Me and my sister were the biggest tomboys because he so wanted boys, and I had 2 boys, and I was like, he never got to express the fullness of seeing their games and oh my goodness. But I love what you said, that it just started ding, ding, ding inside, in my head, and letting people know that it does take some time. You might be in certain stages in certain years, but finally, but it's so important that you make sure that you have that information and the tools so that you can work out all of that, eventually.
I would like to add, you talk about time, and that is so important. A lot of times people want you to get over it. You've been doing this too long, get over this. And that is not something that you can just do. My husband passed away in 2006. And sometimes for me, it was yesterday. So it does take time, and you learn to grow, and you learn to deal with some of the questions, some of the wanting to know what happened. You have to learn to deal with everyone around you, and they don't know how to deal with you because you don't know how to deal with you. And so that's why it's so important that this group is that we're here, and that we're offering, this help and the structure. I didn't have that back then. So I was just out there, just lost, just lost. And I just didn't know. I call it checked out. I completely checked out, and I didn't have the support that I needed so I can check in. But eventually it does come. I finally woke up. I had to take off the rose colored glasses. I had to live my life now with a different purpose. Now, my purpose is to make sure I help everyone else go through this same type of thing so they won't bump their heads either. So, that's one of the great things about this grief share and the opportunity to help people. You know, they might not ask questions to anyone else, but once you understand that you have experienced this, then people are more apt to come forward. I've had several people ask me about a widow's connection, so I know the need is definitely there, and not just for widows, but widowers as well, and as well as children and family and friends, because it's so important that we all understand the importance of helping and being there and listening to one another.
And if I could, Elder Amanda, just listening to, Elder Chana and Lady Shanae, it just reminds me of one of the goals of Grief Share is not just, the healing and walking alongside someone in their grief journey, but to develop a healthy perspective
Right.
On grief, to move to that point. Like Elder Sean, I love what you said about, sharing with your boys, you have your grandfather's this, or you able to present and project something healthy in regards to what you experienced in grief. And so I think that's so important, which is why I'm so passionate about this endeavor, because we want everyone to be able in your due season and time to be able to pour into others with a healthy perspective
Right.
of what grief is,
Right.
and to have a healthy approach of explaining your journey where it can really encourage and lift someone up, as they're going through theirs. So that's one of the things I really love about Grief Share.
Yeah, I totally agree as far as a healthy approach to navigate through it. I think for me, experiencing grief at an early age, I was about 7 years old, my grandmother passed away. That stage of denial, as far as just not knowing and not knowing what's happening, just feeling just stuck. You feel like you're just sinking in quicksand and you're not able to move. And it's like, I just want to survive this stage. I just want to be able to just breathe. I just want to be able to just get out of this stage as best as I can. But I think for me, I've experienced that multiple times as far as having close losses. It's just being stuck as far as that denial stage, not knowing what that next stage would look like as well. So it's like, you hear, flight or fight. And it's like, I don't know what to do. It's not clear. It's not concise. It's just almost feels like a black hole, until you have others that come alongside of you and support you to help you, grab you by the hand, hug you. They might not even say anything, just be there. Just like Elder Amanda mentioned earlier, Elder Apollon mentioned earlier, just being in somebody's presence. And I think for me, that brought some more clarity to navigate through that denial stage, and just coming alongside others that are at that stage, not knowing what to say, just being there, just being present as best as possible, letting them know and reminding them that they're not there by themselves. They are not there by themselves. You're not there by yourself. You have others that have experienced grief. Might not be the same measure of grief, high or low, but we've experienced grief as well. And we know that there's a burden there. We know that there's a heavy weight there. We know that there's some tough times there and ahead of you as well. And we feel that pain, so we're here to come alongside of each and every one of you, just like others have come alongside of us.
Right.
We went through those stages as well. And it's unfortunately, it's inevitable. We all are going to pass away.
Right.
We all are going to pass away. We're all going to experience it. It's just on the level that you experience it as well. But just be reminded you're not alone. And grief is not just loss of a loved one. It's loss of a job. It's
Right.
loss of things that were near and dear to you.
Mhm.
Some, loss of pets, things of that nature. It's a heavy weight and a heavy burden. And it's not isolated or relegated to just a small box.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, I hear you. But the Bible tells us to mourn with those who mourn.
Right.
And one of the when someone has said something about is incarceration, part of the grief. My dad was incarcerated, so I felt like I went through grief twice with him. Like we've been through here, okay, and then I have to be there on your bedside when you take your last breath, and we're in a prison. So wait a minute. There's a whole lot we need to discuss. So yes, it is because I warned you before already. Now I have to mourn your actual death. So yes, for the person who asked if is that grieving, absolutely. I grieve my father
And
because
you're absolutely right, Elder, because those are considered secondary losses.
That's it. Mhm.
The secondary loss is for a loved one that's incarcerated. For the ones who are having to visit your grieving, that regular relationship of I get to come home see my parent, get to come home see my son. We get to gather on the holidays. We get to celebrate the birthdays. So the secondary loss is the death of the dream of what we thought life would be. And so, yes, it definitely is a part of grieving. And then you made such a profound point of if they're in there long enough and then they ultimately die while incarcerated, that's another layer. It adds to it. It's a complication to that grief.
And Elder, if I could add, not just incarceration, but mental health challenges. So like the parent of a child who has mental health issues or cognitive disabilities, all the hopes and dreams you had for that child, there's some grief there. Now, that's not to say you don't have the grace to raise the child, however he or she is, but it was like, oh, I thought you were going to be this and this and that. So
Right.
there's some grief along with that. So, I mean, I love the question. And I love your response, and I love your response, Elder Haynes, because it's absolutely more than just this person passed away. We grieve in so many other ways.
Right. Right.
So good. So good. One of the things too that I think it's important for our listening audience to know is that when we're dealing with grief and loss, that the experts say we are in early grief for the first 2 years following an individual's passing. Same can be said about relationships and other components that we grieve about. And so what matters is how we journey. It's so important that we find healthy coping ways to be able to unpack that grief. And Dr. Angela alluded to that earlier. How do you do that? Self-care is a huge thing. It's so important in grief. If I could lend some examples of self-care, it would be to be able to take in the things that are going to promote healing in your body. So what does that look like? Massages. Maybe it's getting together with a friend that you know would give space to you. I hear that men in grief, they become very active physically. So they'll go out and they'll run, or they'll go get a gym membership because they're working out that stress in their body. Maybe they're golfing. Women, we will go have tea, or we will sit across someone, and there doesn't necessarily have to be any communication, but it's just taking space. Maybe even it's listening to soothing music. My son passed away tragically in 2018. My husband died tragically in 2021. Every night I still listen to deep sleep meditation music so that I can sleep. That's the way that I self-care, because I know that if I don't, I will wake up like 2 hours at a time. It doesn't mean I don't trust God for my rest. It means that my body has been through trauma, that I have activators, and still going to bed by myself, that's still an activator. Still waking up and knowing, okay, I was a mother of 3. I'm still a mother of 3, but there's 2 that are living. Those are everyday things. In this grief share component, one of the presenters, Nancy Guthrie, was in a session one time, and she mentioned that grief is like a computer program. You know how we are on our computers and we have different screens up at any given moment. So it's not necessarily just one. We might have the one facing the screen, but there are others that are running in the background. That's grief. That is grief. And so whatever we can do to self-care and to promote healing and do those activities like going to in-person sessions like Grief Share, or attending the upcoming Surviving the Holidays. These are things that are important in your grief. Elder Topaz?
Yeah, so I just want to, first of all, thank each and every one of you. This has been so amazing, absolutely amazing. I know that those who were listening were able to glean and really reflect on what they're going through, their families and those that they love and support on, but also those who are going to watch. I just want to encourage everyone to share this live at 5. It's such a critical season right now with grief and loss. We know there's milestones, birthdays, anniversaries, special little moments that you have with that person. But, the holidays, there's a great, as Elder Eduardo said, there's a weight that is placed upon some people because of the holidays and not having that person there anymore. And so we want you to not only share this, but also we have an event that's coming up, a very special event. It's called Surviving the Holidays. It is on Saturday, December the 17th from 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock at the Potter's House of Fort Worth. It is an in-person event, and we want you to come out and just really come amongst a group of supporters and believers, those who have gone through similar grief journeys, to just help you navigate getting through this holiday season, just to navigate being able to just walk this journey with someone who has your back, who supports you, who can share strategies, who can love on you, and to equip you as you're navigating through this grief share journey. But definitely, we want you to be a part of this. It's absolutely free. So don't feel like you are bound by finances or anything like that. It's absolutely free. We want you to come out so that we can come together for this particular event. Also, our actual grief share group, support group, is launching on January the 12th. It's going to be on Thursdays from 6:30 to 8:30. It is going to be in person. You must register for this event. So I do want to say that for this grief share group, it is open to the public. Anyone can come, any supporter of someone that's going through grief, or if you are going through grief, it is absolutely open to anyone. So there is the information there. Go to tphw.com/grief share. That's all the information you need in order to register for both of those events, Surviving the Holidays and for the group that meets. It meets on a 13-week cycle every week. And so just because you may not start on the first week, you can join at any week in that 13-week cycle. So don't feel like you have to wait a whole 13 weeks to join us. Wherever you get in, we'll bring you back and cycle you back in and make sure you have everything you need for that grief share journey. But please inquire even after this broadcast. Visit our website at tphfw.org for more information. Any of our social media platforms, you can get this information on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter. So we want to make sure that you are equipped for this journey that you are going through. Also, on this Saturday, December the 10th, we have an amazing initiative. So first of all, so many amazing initiatives at the Potter's House of Fort Worth. I just want to say that. But this Saturday, we have Christmas for the children of the incarcerated. It is Saturday, December the 10th. As many of you said earlier, we love to love on our people, love on the community, love on those who connect with us. And this is another way that we want to love on children and families who have a loved one who is incarcerated. So if you want to be a part of this, you can lend your support financially. You can volunteer, and the link is there on the screen. If you want to volunteer to be a part of this initiative, it's from 9 to 6, but you don't have to be there the entire time. If you log on and look at that particular sign up form or registration form, you can pick and choose the times and the areas in which you want to serve. So I don't want you to feel like you are bound by that time limit. You come in and work and serve in whatever capacity that you can, but we welcome it, and we are so appreciative for you to join us and come alongside us as we're serving other families. Next, Wednesday night Bible study. Let me tell you something, Pastor Winfield, Pastor Winfield, and we thank him so much. First of all, I want to honor our pastor for allowing us to be on platforms like this, to allow us to do ministry in a spirit of excellence and to do it well, and to trust the gifts that we have, each and every one of us, to be able to pour into the lives of others. So we thank you, Pastor Winfield and Lady V. But Wednesday night Bible study is an amazing time in teaching in the word, just for us to dive in a little bit deeper. Our pastor answers questions that you may have about what he's preached on and taught on. But Wednesday night Bible study, please be sure to join us either in person or online. We would love to have you be a part of that. And last but not least, we have our Christmas Eve production that is coming up on December the 24th. It is at 6 p.m. It is in person. And our production this year is called Our King is Here. Y'all know all of our productions are absolutely amazing. It has such a prophetic undertone and message within there. So we want you to bring the entire family as we celebrate the life and ministry of Jesus Christ through this particular production on December the 24th at 6 p.m. We would love to have you. And with that being said, we absolutely love you, and there's nothing that you can do about it. So please register for our Surviving the Holidays event and our Grief Share support group. And we love you, and we will see you soon. God bless you.